The frozen secret the wind screamed across the white world. Snowflakes danced like knives, cutting through the night. The storm was endless, covering mountains, rivers, and valleys in a heavy blanket of ice. Nothing moved on this frozen land. Or so it seemed. Beneath the snow, far under the surface, something lived. 3 figures lay trapped inside a deep drift of ice and frost. They were not human. Their skin carried a faint glow, soft and blue, as if a hidden light was burning inside their bodies. Their eyes were closed, their lips pale, and their hearts beating only once every few moments. They were 3 alien sisters, born into a world that hated them, born into a society that had judged them unworthy. They were not like the others of their kind. Where their people valued life, children, and future bloodlines, these 3 were different. They were born infertile. For their own kind, this was the greatest curse. A shame so heavy that their families had chosen death over life. And so, the sisters were taken far away, led into the snowstorm, and buried alive beneath the icy ground. Their people left them to freeze, to disappear, to be forgotten forever. But fate has strange plans. The storm howled above them, and the snow piled higher and higher. Their faint lights almost faded away. Their bodies trembled, trying to hold on to the last drops of life. Darkness pressed in, whispering that this was the end. And then, a sound footsteps far above on the surface of the storm. A lone human walked. His name did not matter here, but his presence did. Wrapped in heavy gear, face hidden behind a frost-covered mask, he forced his way through the blizzard. He was not a native of this world. He was an explorer, a wanderer, perhaps even a soldier far from his own home. The snow blinded him. The cold bit into his bones, but he kept moving, searching for anything that could give him shelter. He believed he was alone on this cursed land. But the land had secrets. Suddenly, his boot struck the ground, and he stopped. He felt a vibration, a strange pulse under the ice. At first he thought it was his mind playing tricks, but then he felt it again like a weak heartbeat deep under the snow. He dropped to his knees and pressed, his gloved hand against the frozen surface. The pulse was there, faint but real. "What is this?" he whispered to himself, his voice nearly stolen by the storm. He began to dig. His hands scraped away snow. His tools cut into the ice. The storm screamed around him, but he did not stop. Something inside him pushed him forward. A strange pull, as if the earth itself wanted him to find what was hidden. Minutes passed. His body grew weaker, his breath short, but then he saw it. A faint blue glow shining from under the ice. His eyes widened. He dug faster, his heart racing. Soon his hands uncovered shapes bedizened 3 bodies lying together, frozen but not dead. The sisters, their faces looked peaceful, but their chests moved ever so slightly. Their breaths were weak, but they were still alive. The humans stared in shock. He did not know what kind of beings they were, or why they were here. But he knew one thing: if he left them, they would die. If he helped them, he might be risking his own life. The storm roared. Louder, angrier, as if it did not want him to choose. His hand trembled, hovering over the icy forms. And then he made his decision. He would not leave them. He placed his gear beside him, leaned forward, and began breaking the ice around their bodies, pulling them free from their frozen grave. Above them, lightning flashed in the clouds. The world itself seemed to watch. Something ancient had just been awakened. The secret of the snow was no longer hidden, and nothing would ever be the same again. Asterisk, the human stranger the storm did not forgive. It never forgave. The human fought against it step by step, every movement heavy as if the sky itself wanted him to fall. Snow swallowed his legs, wind tore at his coat, and frost crawled across the edges of his mask. Yet he pushed forward, stubborn, unyielding, the kind of man who had walked through too many battles to let mere weather defeat him. His name was forgotten by history, and maybe that was best. Out here, names had no meaning. Only willpower mattered. He came from a world far away, a world of green forests and warm suns. But he had left it long ago. Now he was a traveler of places where no other human dared to go. And this frozen wasteland was one of them. Inside his chest, his heart pounded with a rhythm of survival. But beneath his boots, another rhythm echoed soft, slow, faint. The heartbeat that had drawn him to the snowdrift. He had uncovered the 3 glowing bodies, but now he crouched in silence, staring at them. Their skin shimmered faintly in the stormlight, as though a ghostly fire burned inside them. He had seen many strange creatures in his journeys, but never anything like these. They looked fragile, yet powerful. Beautiful, yet terrifying. The sisters did not move. Their breaths were shallow, their lips pale. Still alive, but fading. The human's gloved hand hovered near them, uncertain. He did not know if touching them would harm him, or if the glow meant poison, or worse. But another thought pressed harder. If I do nothing, they will die. He clenched his jaw. For reasons he could not explain, he could not leave them. Slowly, carefully, he lifted the first sister from the snow. Her body was cold as stone, lighter than he expected. She stirred weakly at his touch, a soft sound escaping her throat. It was not a word, more like a broken whisper. But it sent a chill through him. He placed her gently on the ground beside him and worked to free the second, then the third. His breath came out in clouds, his body shaking with effort, but he managed. Now all 3 lay before him, side by side in the storm. He stared at them, trying to make sense of the mystery. Who were they? Why had they been buried alive? What kind of people would abandon their own in the snow? Questions circled in his mind, but the storm gave no answers. Suddenly, the sisters' eyes flickered. Not fully open, just flickers of light behind their eyelids. Their glowing skin pulsed weakly, like the last sparks of a dying fire. The human leaned closer, his voice firm but gentle. "You're not going to die here." "Not while I'm breathing." He opened his pack and pulled out a thermal blanket, wrapping it around their shivering forms. He gave them water from his canteen, tilting it carefully to their lips. A few drops slid inside, and their throats moved faintly as they swallowed. It was not enough. They needed more: heat, shelter, protection. And he had very little time. The human rose to his feet, scanning the storm. In the distance, through the swirling white, he thought he saw something, a shadow, tall and moving. His hand went to the weapon strapped to his side. He had learned long ago that when fate delivered something strange, danger always followed. But when he looked again, the shadow was gone. Only the wind moved now. Still, the unease in his chest grew heavier. He turned back to the sisters. Their faint light glowed against the blanket. Their breaths came quicker now, though still weak. They were holding on, fighting against death, and in that moment, the human felt something shift inside him. He had saved lives before, but this felt different. As if these 3 beings were not just strangers. As if rescuing them would change everything. The storm thundered above, lightning cracking in the sky. The world itself seemed to warn him. Nothing will ever be the same again. The human pulled the blanket tighter around them. Then whispered to the storm, almost as if daring it to listen. Their mind to protect now. And so, in the heart of the frozen night, an unlikely bond began. A bond that would soon shake the stars. Asterisk. Unearthing the sisters, the storm pressed harder, as if the sky wanted to bury its secret again. Snow swirled like ghosts around the human and the 3 glowing bodies. His hands ached from digging, but he did not stop. He had freed them from the surface, yet ice still clung to their skin. Binding them like chains, he worked with steady force, breaking shards of frost away. The sound of metal scraping against frozen stone echoed in the night. Each strike of his tool was an act of defiance against the storm, against the death waiting in the cold. The sisters lay silent, but not lifeless. Their faint breaths fogged the air, barely visible. Their glow pulsed weakly, a rhythm of survival. The human leaned closer, listening. At first, only the howl of wind filled his ears. But then something else. A murmur, a vibration. Not from the storm, but from them. It was a voice, but not like any human tongue. Soft, broken syllables whispered between them, too weak to form words. Yet the sound carried meaning. A call for life, a plea not to be abandoned. The man's chest tightened. He did not understand their language, but he understood desperation. He pulled the blanket tighter around their bodies. Then, using his gear, he lit a small heating coil, its orange glow fighting against the blue stormlight. He placed it near them. Slowly, the frost on their skin began to melt, drops of water sliding across their strange patterns. One sister stirred. Her eyelids fluttered, and for a moment her eyes opened. They were not like human eyes, bright, luminous, with shifting colors like liquid fire. They locked on the human, weak but filled with a question. The man froze. He had seen eyes of enemies, of beasts, of machines. But these eyes held something else: fear, pain, and a faint spark of trust. "You're safe," he said softly. Though he knew she could not understand, the eye closed again, her strength fading. But the spark remained. He worked faster, rubbing their arms to bring warmth, feeding them small drops of water. His mind screamed at him, "What are you doing? They could be dangerous. They could kill you the moment they rise." Yet another voice inside whispered louder, "If you leave them, you are no different from the ones who buried them." The storm cracked above, lightning painting the sky white. For a split second, the human saw distant shapes moving in the blizzard. Not close, not clear, but there, watching. He cursed under his breath. He had little time. The ground beneath him groaned. The snow shifted, heavy, pressing against the small hollow he had carved. If he stayed here too long, the storm would bury them again. He had to move, but how could he carry three? He looked at them, their frail forms glowing faintly. They were helpless, yet something about them told him they were not ordinary. There was power locked inside their fragile shells, power waiting to rise. He grabbed the first sister, lifting her across his shoulders. She was cold, but her faint glow warmed his neck. He set her down near the pack, then returned for the second, then the third. His body screamed in pain, muscles burning. But he did not stop when all three were together. Huddled close under the blanket, he paused. His breath came out in sharp bursts. His vision blurred with exhaustion. But he smiled faintly. "They're alive," he whispered to himself. "That's enough." Then, faintly, a sound came. From the sisters, a word. Only one. Weak, broken, carried on three lips at once. "Help!" The human's blood froze. He understood that word. The storm screamed louder, almost in rage. The distant shadows moved again, closer now. He knew then, this was no rescue of chance. He had stepped into a story much larger than himself, and the world would never let him walk away. The first breath the storm roared above. But within the shallow hollow of snow and ice, another sound rose, soft, fragile. Yet powerful breathing, the three sisters lay close together beneath the blanket. Their faint blue glow pulsing in unison. Their skin no longer looked like stone. Warmth returned drop by drop. Their chests rose and fell with shaky rhythm, as if their lungs were remembering life again. The human watched them carefully, his gloved hands resting near his weapon. He did not trust this moment, though his heart ached with relief. Life was returning, but with it, questions he could not yet answer. He leaned forward, searching their faces. Their features were sharp, unfamiliar, alien in every sense, yet strangely graceful. Their hair shimmered like strands of frozen light, tangled from the snow. Their eyelids trembled. Then, the first sister opened her eyes. The glow within them cut through the stormlight, golden and shifting, like liquid fire burning behind glass. Her lips parted, and a breath escaped dragged, weak but alive. She blinked at him, her gaze unsteady, confused, afraid. The human's voice broke the silence. "You're safe." For now, she tilted her head slightly, as if trying to understand. Her hand twitched, fingers curling against the blanket. The second sister stirred next. Her breath came sharper, as though pulled from the edge of death. She coughed, a strange sound, and then her eyes snapped open deep violet, glowing faintly in the darkness. She looked at her sibling first, then at the human. Her lips moved no words. Just a sound, soft but filled with meaning. The third was slower. Her chest barely rose, her glow the weakest. The human's chest tightened as he leaned closer, pressing the heated coil nearer to her body. He touched her wrist, feeling for the faint rhythm of her pulse. For a moment, he thought she was gone. Then her mouth opened, and she drew in a long, trembling breath. Her eyes fluttered open, silver and bright. Reflecting the lightning above, all three sisters now breathed. The human let out a long sigh of relief. He had not realized how tightly he had been holding his own breath. He whispered under his mask, almost to himself, "First breath. First chance." But the relief did not last. The sisters began to speak. Their voices were broken, weak, but layered three tones blending into one eerie harmony. The words were alien, but something about their rhythm pierced his chest. It was not anger. It was not threat. It was sorrow. The human shook his head. "I don't understand you." One of the sisters turned her gaze on him. Her golden eyes narrowed, her lips shaping carefully around a single word, one she must have heard long ago, one she fought to remember. "Why?" The human stiffened. His mind raced. Why what? Why had he saved them? Why had their people abandoned them? Why were they alive at all? He answered the only way he could. Because no one deserves to be left to die. The sisters exchanged glances. Their eyes shimmered brighter, their breathing steadier. Something in his words struck them, though he could not know what. But before any more could be spoken, the storm shifted. A howl louder than before swept across the sky, shaking the ground beneath them. The human tensed hand on his weapon. He scanned the blizzard, eyes narrowing. Through the white curtain of snow, distant lights flickered. Not lightning. Not natural. Artificial, machines or, worse, hunters. The sisters reacted first. Their weak bodies trembled, fear flashing in their eyes. They tried to rise, but their strength failed. One collapsed against him, whispering something in her strange tongue. He didn't need translation. He understood the fear. Someone or something was coming. The human's jaw set. He pulled the blanket tighter around them, gripping his pack. He could not stay here. If the storm had enemies inside it, then his rescue had already been seen. He whispered again. "Firm, steady. You've taken your first breath. Now we fight for the next." He lifted the weakest sister into his arms. The others struggled to follow, leaning against him. Step by step, he forced his body to move through the snow. The storm swallowed them. But the glow of the sisters burned against the night. Their first breath was not just survival, it was the beginning of a war. Asterisk. A dangerous bondsnow swallowed their steps as the human carried the weakest sister, while the other two stumbled close beside him. The storm was not kind. Wind tore at their faces, ice stung their skin, and every breath burned cold in their lungs. Yet still they moved, one step at a time, deeper into the white wilderness. The human strength was fading. His arms trembled under the weight, but he refused to stop. He had carried wounded soldiers before, dragged friends from fire and ash. But this was different. These three were not his kind. They were strangers, aliens, and yet his heart treated them as his own. Behind his mask, his jaw clenched. He whispered to himself, the words muffled by the wind. They're alive because of me. They stay alive because of me. The sisters, though weak, seemed to understand. Their eyes followed him as he fought against the storm. Their breaths steadied, their glowing skin flickering brighter with every moment near him. And yet, trust was fragile. The golden-eyed sister, the first to wake, glanced at him often. Her gaze was sharp, suspicious. Her lips moved in her strange tongue, whispering to her siblings. The violet-eyed one answered, her voice like broken music, unsure but steady. The silver-eyed one stayed silent, too weak, leaning against his shoulder. The human knew they were speaking about him. The tone told him enough. Fear, doubt, wonder. He ignored it. Survival came first. Explanations would come later, after what felt like hours. He found Sheltor jagged hollow in the side of a cliff, hidden beneath layers of ice. Not perfect, but enough to keep the storm at bay. He guided them inside, laid the silver-eyed sister down gently, and set the heating coil once more. The small cave glowed with two lights, the orange fire of human technology and the blue shimmer of alien skin. The sisters huddled together, whispering in soft tones. Their glow grew brighter now, as if warmth fed their very souls. The human leaned against the wall, exhausted. He removed his mask for the first time, steam rising from his breath. His face was rough, scarred, marked by old battles. His eyes, though tired, were steady. The golden-eyed sister studied him closely. Then, slowly, she spoke. Human, he froze. It was the first word she had spoken clearly, without breaking. Her voice was soft but sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. He nodded. Yes, human. Her gaze did not soften. Instead, she pointed at him weakly, then at herself and her sisters. She spoke again, words he did not understand, but her tone was clear, a question. Why had he saved them? He answered with the only truth he had. Because you were alive. That's enough. The sisters exchanged glances. The violet-eyed one tilted her head, uncertain. The silver-eyed one stirred faintly, whispering a single broken syllable that meant nothing to him, but made her siblings tremble. The human did not push further. Instead, he gave them more water, placing the canteen carefully in their hands. They drank slowly, as if each drop was treasure. The bond was fragile, but it was forming. Still, danger lingered. From outside the cave came a sound distant, but real. The crunch of snow. The low hum of engines. The human stiffened, his hand flying to his weapon. The sisters reacted instantly. Their glow dimmed, their breathing sharp. Fear crossed their faces, pure and raw. The human looked at them, then at the cave's mouth. He understood without words. Whoever was out there, it was not a friend. He raised his weapon and spoke firmly. You're safe. As long as I stand, you're safe. For the first time, the golden-eyed sister's suspicion softened. She placed a trembling hand on his arm, her touch cold but gentle. Her lips moved again, and though the language was alien, the tone was clear. She was saying, we trust you. For now, the human nodded once. He turned toward the storm, weapon ready. The bond had been born in snow and fear, and it would soon be tested in fire and blood. Asterisk shadows in the blizzard, the cave walls groaned under the weight of the storm. Snow hissed against the stone, and the wind howled like a living creature outside. Inside, the human and the three sisters sat in uneasy silence. The heating coil glowed faintly, but it could not erase the cold that crept into their bones. The sisters huddled together, their shimmering skin dimmed as if hiding from unseen eyes. The human remained near the entrance, weapon gripped tight, his gaze fixed on the swirling white beyond. He had heard it. The noise? The steady crunch of boots against snow. The low hum of machines cutting through the storm. They were not illusions. Someone or something was out there. The golden-eyed sister whispered to her siblings in their strange tongue. Her words were sharp, urgent, like warnings etched in fire. The violet-eyed one clutched her hand, fear trembling through her frame. The silver-eyed one, still weak, closed her eyes and leaned heavily against them. Her glow faint but steady. The human turned toward them. "You know who they are," he said, his voice low. "Don't you?" The golden-eyed sister met his gaze. She did not answer in words, but her eyes told him enough. Yes, they knew. And they feared. The human cursed under his breath. He adjusted his weapon, checking the charge. He was strong, but one man against a hunting party. He had done it before, but this time he carried more than his own life. The sound outside grew clearer. Voices now muffled by the storm, but cruel in their tone. Metallic echoes followed, as if machines moved alongside the hunters. The human pressed his back to the wall, signaling the sisters to stay silent. He could see their terror rising, their glowing skin flickering like candle flames in the wind. They were powerless, still recovering from the ice that had nearly killed them. He whispered to them, firm and steady. "Stay low. Stay quiet. Let me deal with this." The sisters obeyed, though fear shook their limbs. Then the shadows came. Figures appeared in the storm. Tall and armored, their outlines sharp against the snow. Their eyes glowed red through their helmets, and strange weapons hung in their hands. Behind them, hovering machines drifted like predators, scanning the land with beams of light. The human's pulse quickened. He counted 6 hunters, 3 drones. Too many. One of the hunters stopped near the cave entrance. His helmet turned, scanning the hollow. The beam of light cut dangerously close. Spilling across the snow where faint footprints remained, the human gritted his teeth. He had covered their tracks, but the storm had betrayed him, revealing the trail. The golden-eyed sister gasped softly. The human snapped his head back at her, finger to his lips. Silence. But it was too late. The hunter turned fully toward the cave. The beam of light swept across the entrance, illuminating the faint blue glow of the sisters within. The human raised his weapon. Breath steady, finger tight on the trigger. He whispered under his breath, "Not today." The first shot tore through the storm. The hunter collapsed into the snow, sparks flashing from his armor. The others roared in their alien tongue, weapons rising, beams of energy cutting through the night. The storm itself lit up with fire and lightning. The sisters cried out, clinging to each other. Their fear was sharp, but so was something else in Gar. The golden-eyed one pressed her palm to the ground, and for a moment the snow shifted around her, vibrating with strange energy. The violet-eyed sister's glow flared brighter, her body trembling with power. Even the weakest, silver-eyed one opened her eyes, light pouring from them like silver flames. The human saw it, power untamed, dangerous, maybe. They were not as helpless as they looked. The battle had only begun. Asterisk. The escape the cave exploded with light. Red beams from the hunter's weapons clashed against the white storm, cutting through stone and snow. Sparks rained down, the air filling with the scent of burning ice. The human rolled to the side, dragging the sisters with him. The heating coil shattered, darkness swallowing the hollow except for the glow of alien skin and the storm outside. The sisters trembled, pressed against the wall while the human returned fire. His weapon barked with sharp bursts, striking one drone and sending it crashing into the snow with a hiss of smoke. But more lights pierced the blizzard. Shadows moved closer. They were surrounded. "Move," the human barked, his voice hard. He grabbed the silver-eyed sister into his arms again, motioning for the other two to follow. They stumbled behind him, their steps clumsy but desperate. Blasts tore into the cave walls as they escaped through the narrow opening. The storm greeted them with a howl, snow blinding their vision. The hunters shouted, their voices distorted by helmets but filled with rage. The chase had begun. The human forced his way through waist-high snow, every step heavy. The sisters followed, their faint light leaving trails in the storm. Behind them, the hunter's beams cut closer and closer. The golden-eyed sister stumbled, nearly falling, but the human caught her wrist and pulled her forward. "Stay with me," he shouted, her eyes locked with his, fierce, despite her weakness. For the first time, she nodded not in suspicion, but in trust. The storm became a battlefield. Drones zipped overhead, scanning with harsh red beams. The human fired upward, dropping one with a precise shot, but the effort cost him precious seconds. A blast struck the ground near his feet, snow exploding into the air. He cursed and pushed harder. The sisters clung close, their breaths ragged, their glow flickering. Then something changed. The violet-eyed sister stumbled, falling to her knees. She pressed her palms into the snow. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ground beneath them shook. The snow around her shifted violently, rising into a wall of ice between them and the hunters. The human's eyes widened. He had seen alien weapons, alien ships, but not this. Not raw power flowing straight from a living being. The wall cracked under the hunter's fire, but it slowed them. It gave time. Time was survival. The human pulled her to her feet. "Good, now move." They pushed deeper into the storm. Lightning flashed above, thunder shaking the frozen peaks. The sisters' glow grew brighter, as though fear was feeding their hidden strength, but the hunters were relentless. Blasts tore through the storm, one grazing the human's shoulder. He grunted, pain flaring, but he kept moving. He had carried worse wounds before. He would carry these sisters through fire if he had to. The golden-eyed one suddenly cried out, pointing ahead. Through the storm, a narrow fissure in the cliff appeared a hidden path. Half buried in snow, shelter, maybe escape. The human didn't hesitate. He forced his way toward it, shoving through the drifts. The sisters followed, their glows lighting the path. The hunters closed in, their shouts echoing through the storm. At the last moment, the silver-eyed sister raised her trembling hand. Her glow surged, silver light bursting from her palm. For an instant, the storm itself bent. Wind and snow twisted, swirling into a blinding vortex that swallowed the hunter's vision. The human dragged them into the fissure, heart pounding. They pressed against the rock walls, breaths heavy, waiting. The hunters' voices faded, lost in the storm. The sisters collapsed, exhausted, their powers dimming. The human crouched beside them, chest heaving. He studied them in silence, his mind racing. They were no ordinary refugees. They were something far greater, and if their enemies wanted them buried in snow, it was because the galaxy feared what they could become. Asterisk secrets revealed the fissure was narrow and cold, but it gave them shelter. The walls of stone blocked the worst of the wind, and the storm's roar softened to a distant growl. Inside, the human set the sisters down gently. His chest rose and fell with sharp breaths, pain throbbing in his shoulder where the blast had grazed him. The sisters lay close together, their bodies glowing faintly, their energy fading after what they had unleashed in the snow. The human stared at them in silence. His hands trembled, not from the cold, but from what he had seen. Walls of ice summoned by one, storm winds bent by another. A silver light strong enough to blind the enemy. These were not helpless survivors. These were beings with powers that could shake worlds, and yet they looked at him not with pride, but with sorrow. The golden-eyed sister was the first to speak. Her voice cracked, weak but steady. She pointed at herself, then her siblings. Her words came in their strange tongue, a flow of sounds he could not understand. But then, slowly, she spoke one word in his language. Broken. The human frowned. Broken. No, you're alive. She shook her head firmly, repeating the word with heavy breath. Broken. Her eyes glistened as she looked at her sisters. Then at him. The violet-eyed one reached for his hand, her touch cold but trembling with meaning. She struggled to speak. At first, only alien words slipped through her lips, but then she forced out something simple, heavy with grief. Not mothers. The human's chest tightened. The pieces began to fall together. The silver-eyed sister, still weak but listening, whispered softly. Her alien tongue carried sorrow like music. And though the human could not understand, her tears explained everything. The golden-eyed one pressed her palm to the ground, her voice rising in broken fragments of his language. Our kind. Only mothers. Only life. We, no life. No children. The human finally understood. Infertile. That was their curse. That was their crime. Their people worshipped birth, future, bloodlines. These three sisters had been born unable to give that future. To their kind, it made them worthless, shameful, better erased. His fists clenched. He had seen cruelty before, sawed over skin, over land, over faith. But to bury one's own children alive because they could not give birth, that was beyond cruelty. That was evil. You're not broken, he said sharply, his voice echoing off the stone. You're alive. That's what matters. The golden-eyed sister stared at him, silent. The violet-eyed one tilted her head, as if trying to believe his words. The silver-eyed one closed her eyes, tears slipping down her pale cheeks. The human leaned closer, lowering his voice. Listen to me. Where I come from, worth is not only in giving life. Worth is in fighting, in surviving, in choosing your path. And you fought death itself. That makes you stronger than any of them. For the first time, their glow brightened. Not much, just enough to show they had hurt him. But then, their fear returned. The golden-eyed sister whispered something quickly, urgently. Her voice shook. She pointed toward the storm. The human frowned. They're still coming, aren't they? She nodded slowly. He sat back, exhaling hard. His mind raced. The hunters would not stop. They would search every cliff, every fissure. And when they found the sisters, they would bury them a gone or worse. The human looked at the three, their faces pale but eyes burning with something new. Not just fear. Hope. He made his choice. They want you erased. But I don't care who they are or how many come. I won't let it happen. The sisters stared at him, their glowing eyes wide, their silence heavy. Then, slowly, the golden-eyed one touched her chest and whispered a word in her own tongue. A name. Her name. One by one, the others whispered theirs. Names he could not yet pronounce, but names filled with strength. The bond was no longer silent. It had a voice, and it would be heard by the galaxy. Asterisk. The last stand, the fissure could no longer hide them. The storm had carried their light too far, and the hunters were closing in. Red beams swept across the white world, scanning the cliffs, burning the snow wherever they touched. The rumble of engines shook the ground as more drones filled the sky. The human tightened his grip on his weapon. His injured shoulder throbbed, but he ignored the pain. His eyes stayed sharp, his jaw locked. He had fought many battles before, but never like this, never while carrying the fragile hope of 3 lives. The galaxy wanted erased. The sisters huddled behind him. Their glow flickered brighter now, no longer just faint sparks of survival. It was growing, wild and uncontrolled, as if fear and anger were feeding it. The golden-eyed sister leaned forward, whispering to him. Her voice cracked, urgent. "Run." The human shook his head. "No, we end this here." Her eyes widened. She did not understand why he would fight when escape was still possible. But then she saw it in him, the fire of a man who would not run while others suffered. The first blast struck the rock wall, exploding in a shower of sparks. The fissure trembled. Hunters poured in, armored shadows with glowing red eyes, weapons raised. The human fired first. His shots were precise, deadly. One hunter fell, another staggered. The sisters gasped, watching him stand unshaken against the storm of fire. But there were too many. Drones darted overhead, beams slicing the ground. Energy blasts screamed past his head. He rolled, firing again, striking another target. The cave walls lit up with red and blue flashes. The violet-eyed sister cried out. Her glow flared violently, filling the fissure with purple light. She slammed her hands against the ground, and a sudden spike of ice erupted from the floor, impaling one of the hunters and throwing 2 more back. The human stared, stunned. Her power was no weapon crafted by machines. It was raw, living energy born from despair. The golden-eyed sister followed, her hands trembling as she raised them. The snow outside twisted, whipping into a blinding storm that pushed the hunters back. Their vision vanished in the swirling chaos. The silver-eyed one, still weak, forced herself to stand. Her breath shook, her body swaying, but her eyes burned silver fire. She raised her palm, and beams of light burst forth, striking drones from the sky. One by one, they fell, their engines screaming before crashing into the snow. The hunters shouted in rage, but their voices cracked with fear. The human saw it too. These sisters, once buried in shame, carried power enough to destroy armies. Their people had feared this truth. That was why they had been erased. But now the galaxy would see. He fought alongside them, his weapon burning hot in his hands. Shot after shot rang out, each one finding its mark. Together, human and sisters became a storm of flesh and light, tearing through the hunters who had come to bury them once more. When the last drone fell smoking into the snow, silence returned. The storm outside softened, as if even the wind bowed to what had happened. The sisters stood together, glowing brighter than ever. Their chests heaved with exhaustion, but their eyes were sharp. Alive, the human lowered his weapon, his body trembling, blood staining his sleeve. He looked at them, breathing hard. "You see? You're not broken. You're stronger than all of them." The golden-eyed sister stepped closer. Her hand, cold and glowing, rested on his arm. For the first time, her lips curved not a word, not a whisper, a smile. The bond was sealed in battle. Not as rescuer and rescued, but as allies. Outside, far beyond the cliffs, the hunter's signal still echoed into the night. More would come, stronger, but for now, they had won. For now, the sisters and the stranger had claimed their place in the storm, and nothing would ever erase them again. Asterisk. A new dawn. The storm broke with the coming of dawn. For the first time in many nights, the sky above the frozen world opened. The endless gray clouds pulled apart and pale sunlight spilled across the land. Snow sparkled like shards of glass. Silence replaced the thunder of the blizzard. The human stood at the edge of a cliff, his weapon hanging loosely at his side. His coat was torn, his shoulders still bleeding, but his eyes were steady. Behind him, the 3 sisters stood together, Their glow faint in the morning light, but alive, stronger than before. They had survived the storm. They had survived the hunters. They had survived death itself. The golden-eyed sister stepped forward, the leader among them. Her gaze swept the horizon as if seeing it for the first time. The world had rejected them, yet here they were, breathing, standing. Free, the violet-eyed one touched her hand to the icy ground. The frost beneath her fingers shifted gently, no longer in rage, but in calm. For the first time, her power did not scream in pain, it hummed with peace. The silver-eyed one lifted her face to the sky, the light of dawn reflecting in her silver gaze. Her weakness was fading. Her glow no longer flickered like a dying ember. It shone with quiet strength, steady and sure. The human watched them, his heart heavy but proud. He had not asked for this fight. He had not planned to find them buried in snow. But fate had chosen him, and now he could not turn away. "You're free," he said softly. His voice carried across the empty valley. "No one will bury you again." The sisters turned to him. For the first time, their eyes carried not just fear, not just sorrow, but hope. The golden-eyed one spoke, her words broken but clear. "Because of you?" The human shook his head. "Because of you. You chose to live. You chose to fight." They fell silent, each word pressing deep into their hearts. For so long they had been told they were broken, worthless, shadows meant to be forgotten. Yet now, standing on the cliff with the dawn rising, they were something else. Survivors, fighters, a promise to the future, but the horizon was not. Empty far in the distance. Glowing trails cut across the sky. Ships larger than the hunters, faster, more dangerous. The hunter's signal had reached its masters. And their masters were coming. The human narrowed his eyes. He knew the war was not over. This was only the beginning. The sisters saw the ships too. Fear returned, but it did not break them this time. Their hands clasped together, light flowing between them. Their glow brighter in unity than it had ever been alone. The golden-eyed one looked at the human, her voice stronger now. Together. He met her gaze, then nodded firmly. Together, the sisters' glow spread wider, filling the cliff with radiant light. The human raised his weapon again, steady despite his wounds. The sun rose higher, painting the battlefield to come in gold and silver. For a moment, they stood like statues against the dawn, the lone human and the three alien sisters. Bound by survival, by blood spilled in the snow, by a bond stronger than fear. The storm had tried to bury them. Their people had tried to erase them. The hunters had tried to kill them, but they were still here, alive, united. Ready, the first breath had given them life. The battle had given them strength. And now, the dawn gave them something greater, purpose. The galaxy would soon know their names, and nothing would ever silence them again. ****